The aftermath of the shooting was filmed from the 9th floor of a nearby building by a member of the public known as Witness B. Their footage is 15 minutes long and begins around 40 seconds after the shooting. Based on this footage, the IPCC rejected the possibility that the gun had been planted, saying,
"There is no sign of any officer planting a firearm on the grass."
And also,
"There is no evidence any person entered the rear of the minicab."
but these statements are misleading. Let's take a look at the first claim. Witness B's footage is very low resolution. Would it even be possible to see a gun in the footage at this distance? We introduced a model of a gun into the scene. Then we applied filters to recreate the resolution of the footage, demonstrating that the gun wouldn't be visible in the video at this distance. However, the footage does show us how the officers moved around the scene. So we can examine the IPCC's claim that there is no evidence that any officer entered the rear of the minicab. Witness B's footage is shaky, so first we stabilize the video so that stationary objects like the cars stay in the same place in the frame. This made it easier to identify individual officers and to track their movements around the scene. We assigned a code name to each officer until we could work out who they are. For example, the officer known as Q63 is identifiable because of his white t-shirt. Then we mapped the areas that would have been hidden from Witness B's camera. When officers drop out of sight within this red zone, behind the minicab and Charlie car, they could potentially have entered the minicab and retrieved the gun. We tracked how Q63 moved around the scene. Whenever he is partly or fully hidden in the red zone, his track turns red. Whenever he is visible, the track is white. We turned this tracking into a timeline and repeated this process for each of the other officers. This meant we could see when any officer was partly or fully hidden behind the minicab and Charlie car. In total, officers entered this zone more than a dozen times, but the IPCC did not examine these moments in any detail. These moments don't tell us that the gun was moved by police officers, but they do show that, based on the footage alone, the IPCC has no grounds to rule out the possibility that any officers entered the rear of the minicab. We mapped dozens of possible chains of connections by which the gun could hypothetically have been carried from the minicab to the grass. Here is a demonstration of one of them. At the time the gun was officially recovered, 7 minutes and 28 seconds into Witness B's footage, two officers, known as Z51 and R31, were standing on the green, where the gun was reportedly found. They can be seen in this photo, taken by a member of the public from the other side of the park. A few seconds later, R31 walks towards the location where the gun was found. If we follow R31's movements backward through time, we can see that 2 minutes earlier, he passed close to Q63. And around 40 seconds earlier, Q63 disappeared within the red zone for 12 seconds. This alone does not suggest that Q63 moved the gun from the minicab. But the IPCC cannot use witness B's footage to rule out that possibility. The IPCC's investigators didn't only misread the evidence, the experts also failed to identify and examine something potentially important, a clear cut in the footage. Before the cut, we see Q63 on the right of the minicab. After the cut, Q63 is on the left. In order to estimate the duration of this gap in the footage, we use the movements of another officer, Z51. He is moving at a steady pace before the cut and afterwards. Studying his walking speed along a likely path between the 2 points, we estimate that the duration of the missing footage is at least 4 seconds. This is potentially long enough for Q63 to access the minicab. This is important because 2 seconds later, Q63 gestures towards the green and seems to communicate with Z51. But neither the inquest nor the IPCC noticed this cut or examined its importance. As we have seen, the gun could have arrived at the grass by 3 possible routes. The route preferred by the IPCC is not consistent with the available spatial or biomechanical evidence. The route preferred by the inquest jury requires at least 4 officers to have missed the gun being thrown. And the final route was not fully investigated by either. In September 2019, our investigation was instrumental in helping the family's lawyers to negotiate an out-of-court financial settlement with the Metropolitan Police. And in November of that year, we presented our findings publicly for the first time in Tottenham, less than a mile from where Duggan was killed.
What you saw here today, people, was us unraveling and unpacking the lies that were told in that inquest. Some people say to us, why do you fight for justice? And I say, well, what choice do you have?